Following the long overdue departure of Kristi Noem, all eyes are turning to the person who has, very obviously, been in charge of the mass deportation efforts from the very beginning.
Previous history in which ruthless means were used to get rid of the people who were raping and murdering and defying established systems of order and justice. And then when people could live freely and peaceably, and children and families and women could be safe, then it became possible to pursue all of these higher elements of life. So when people who are coming to countries like yours that have had struggles and difficulties and pains and challenges, and they're telling you anything other than first and foremost, secure your countries and your territory, they're giving you not only terrible advice, but advice if someone had come to Europe centuries ago and they had followed that advice, Europe would have never become the Europe that it eventually became. And the reason why many Western countries are struggling today is they've forgotten the eternal truth and wisdoms they once followed.
One of your points of contention with Secretary Noem was her handling of the aftermath of those fatal ICE shootings of 2 American citizens, specifically how she jumped to conclusions before their deaths had been investigated, calling them domestic terrorists. I do want to play for you how Senator Mullen reacted just hours after Alex Preddy was shot and killed.
A deranged individual that came in to cause max damage with a loaded pistol with an extra mag that was completely loaded, was shot and killed. How much more does this got to go on before the Democrat leaders there take responsibility for their words?
So obviously there's no evidence that Alex Preddy was deranged or that he came to cause maximum damage with a loaded pistol. He had a license to carry, or that any Democratic leader was responsible for this tragedy. Does that give you any pause?
It gives me pause that you had people like Stephen Miller calling the shots that actually I believe that maybe Kristi Noem acted on. It was Stephen Miller that was talking about a terrorist brandishing a gun. It was Stephen Miller who said it was the position of the United States that we should go after Greenland. It's Stephen Miller that's been repeatedly responsible for embarrassments for the President of the United States by acting too quickly, speaking first and thinking later. I think if I don't think Mark Wayne goes to the podium and repeats something that Stephen Miller says. I think Stephen Miller's demonstrated he too is out of his depth, and I think Mark Wayne will learn from that.
Why am I disappointed with Secretary Noem? Because we're not going after enough people who did this damage at the expense of running numbers that Stephen Miller wants out of the White House. We just want numbers. We want 1,000 a day, 6,000 a day, 9,000 a day, because numbers matter, right? No, they don't matter. Quality matters, not quantity, quality. And what we've seen is a disaster. Under your leadership, Ms. Noem, a disaster. What we've seen is innocent people getting detained that turn out are American citizens. I could talk about the culture that's been created here with Stephen Miller aiding and abetting. I heard first reports that he was the one that said it was a domestic terrorist situation where 2 people lost their lives in Minneapolis. I've heard that report. Maybe you can refute it. I don't know that we'll have time for you to respond because I'm giving you a performance evaluation here. I'm not looking for a response.
What got my attention was that you blamed those statements on Mr. Stephen Miller at the White House. Did you not?
No, sir, I did not. And in fact, where you're seeing that is in a news article of anonymous sources. And anonymous sources say a lot of things, but I've never said that at all.
Well, here's what you said on the record. I'm going to read your words. Quote, "Everything I've done at the direction of the president and Stephen."
Sir, where did you see me say that at? You read that in a news article with no sources affiliated to it.
You said it on the record on January 27th of 2026. Did I read your words accurate?
I enjoy working with the president and with Stephen Miller, and that day we were working to get as much information to the American people as possible. That is what we'll continue to do, and as that happens, we'll go forward.
Do you think it was fair to blame Mr. Miller?
Sir, I did not do that. You're reading from a newspaper article with anonymous sources.
Are you denying that you said that?
Sir, I'm not going to speak to that situation that is relayed on anonymous sources that no one has heard me say that.
It was you.
No. Who reported that to that newspaper?
They're quoting you on the record saying it's Stephen's fault.
You guys ran on targeting violent criminals, worst of the worst. I'm not disputing any of the facts around the cases of these women who were deported and removed with their kids, but given you're looking for more money from Congress, ICE says they need more beds, they need more money. Is it the best use of the administration's resources to be going after moms of young kids, basically?
Do you yourself have an opinion on the subject?
I'm more interested in yours.
Well, what percentage of the, let's just pick an even number of, say, 10 million illegal aliens. Let's say that Biden released, I think it's closer to 20 million. Let's say he released 10 million illegal aliens into the country over the last 4 years. What percentage do you think we should let stay here of those 10 million?
I'm not trying to do a game show.
No, but I'm saying,
I'm just curious if you think that's the best use of your limited dollars.
Is it your view that if a Democrat president releases 10, 15, 20 million illegals into the country, they all then should get to stay forever and for all of life?
Stephen, I don't have a view about what Democratic presidents do. I'm asking what the Republican president you work for and how he wants to use his resources.
So you don't want to answer. Do you have any idea how much of ICE's workforce and resources have had to be reprioritized? How much of the Joint Terrorism Task Force's resources have had to be reprioritized to fight these domestic terrorists? Do you have any idea how many resources are spent
Stephen, you keep
trying
calling
to
them
hunt down and
terrorists, but
track
isn't that
every,
hyperbolic to call them terrorists?
What is? If anything, I'm understating the severity of the situation. What issue was more central in 2024 than turning back the border invasion? And since the day we came in, ICE officers have been subjected to a nonstop campaign of physical violence and harassment every single day. And outside the Portland field office in particular, every night, they come, they assemble, they fight, they try to impede movement, they physically attack. For what purpose? Because we had an election, Boris, we had one. What's the purpose? To use actual physical violence to change the result of the election, to say you cannot turn back the border invasion. You mentioned the threat of international terrorism that is on our shores, the millions of gotaways who entered under the previous administration, on top of the millions more unvetted that were caught and released into the country, and the millions more that were allowed to either fly into the country or overstay their visas. It is a clear and present danger to the national security of this country, and we have federal judges telling President Trump that he can't deport these threats from our communities? This is the choice facing every American. Either we all side and get behind President Trump to remove these terrorists from our communities, or we let a rogue, radical left judiciary shut down the machinery of our national security apparatus. President Trump is going to see this through to his conclusion, and we will find and remove every terrorist from this country, and President Trump will make this nation safer than ever before, and he'll do it over the fighting and opposition of the Democrat Party, over the fighting and opposition of the communist left-wing judges, over the fighting and opposition of the far-left federal bureaucracy. He will not be deterred, Sean.
Right now, Stephen Miller is perhaps the most vulnerable he's ever been in the Trump administration. Trump has nobody else left to blame for the terror of ICE enforcement or for the horrific conditions at immigrant detention centers. Stephen Miller's a white nationalist, and he makes no secret of his extremist views. Trump actually once joked to the press that Miller shouldn't talk about his real opinions. That is not normal. It might feel as though most people are fine with what ICE are doing, particularly if you spend any time at all on the internet, but approval ratings for ICE operations show only roughly a third of people still approve of what they're doing out there. Still way more than you'd hope, maybe, but a large minority compared to people who think the country has gone completely off course when it comes to immigration. People know that Stephen Miller is a creepy little Nazi, and the Republican Party knows that people know that. Here's hoping that with enough pressure, Miller will finally be fired and eventually actually punished for his role in the authoritarian white nationalist nightmare we find ourselves in.